Wowzers, it's November. This year is almost over with. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 11 October films that I saw from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the October new releases that you saw. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. As we go into this, I saw a lot of these movies actually back in September at Fantastic Fest. So some of them I didn't do full reviews on, but I talked about them a little bit longer in my video covering Fantastic Fest. So I'll try and mention that in the video and link to it somewhere around here. And I'd recommend you check out that video because it'll just introduce you to some more obscure films that have come out this year or are going to come out later this year. With that said, let's get started. In last place, Halloween Ends. And ever since this movie came out, it has been incredibly polarizing with audiences. Some people absolutely loved it because it did something new and different with the franchise. And then there's other people like me that just feel like it was a total misfire. This movie felt to me like they decided to do a trilogy because they realized 2018 was going to make a lot of money, and not because they necessarily actually had a trilogy's worth of films, in which case it just felt like they were spinning their wheels trying to come up with something to do to delay the inevitable final showdown between Laurie and Michael, in which case they have to introduce a new character and make the movie really about him and introduce all of these new themes, new ideas, new mythology. All of it just felt like the wrong thing to put in this movie that is supposed to be the conclusion of this gigantic saga, and that's just not the right time to introduce all these new ideas. And because of that, it hurt the story that was kind of interesting that was in there about Corey and the effects of Michael's evil on the town. That actually could have been a good idea for a movie if they actually stuck to it. But they don't. You get to the final 20 minutes, finish off that storyline, and then we rush in, shoehorn in the final showdown that was promised in the trailers. So a movie that didn't really work for me as a movie in general or as a Halloween film. Number 10, VHS 99. And as a point of reference, this is a movie that I saw at Fantastic Fest, and this was my very first VHS film that I've seen. I have not seen any previous films in the franchise. And I watched this at a midnight screening on day 7 of Fantastic Fest, in which case I was very tired. I was kind of burned out on movies, and that might factor into why this is so low on the list. And legitimately, I'd seen so many movies in such a short period of time. I felt physically ill watching this movie. I was getting queasy from all the handheld shaky cam, obnoxious loud noises, the VHS crackle. I just wasn't feeling great. And I watched it late at night when I was already very tired. And I'd seen over 10 movies in a theater at the point in time that I watched this movie at midnight. Point of reference. But as for the specifics itself, it was just real hit or miss for me. The very first segment about a band felt like a very long setup for a quick, cheap little punchline that didn't do much for me. And then the next one about a girl being buried alive, I thought was actually very effective. And I get claustrophobic, the idea of being like in a tight box, being buried alive, that freaks me out. So that one actually found pretty effective as what it was doing. And then you got, the big twist at the end of it. And some of the other ones, there's something in there I'd enjoy, something that wasn't quite fully there for me. So pretty hit or miss. And by the last two, when they had the one with the guy shooting the girl across the street, and then the one where they literally go to hell, I just felt nauseous. It was tough for me to watch because there's just so much shaky cam, handheld cam, which is the gimmick. It's supposed to be found footage type stuff, but if it makes you sick, that's kind of a problem. So I don't know how much of my experience was tied directly to seeing it late at night after a week of seeing a ton of movies, but I just wasn't really crazy about this movie. Number 9, Project Wolf Hunting. This is another one I watched at Fantastic Fest, and as a point of reference, every other movie on this list, including this one, I go positive on, and not really even mixed positive. These are all movies I distinctly enjoy, especially like the next 7 on the list. They're all like B's for me. Movies that I was like, there's something I really enjoy about that, or something doesn't quite work, or something that was like, that was enjoyable. I'd watch that again, but it didn't really do anything that memorable. Everything else on here, we're going positive on. So even though this is number 9, to be very, very, very clear, I had a lot of fun with this movie. And Project Wolf Hunting, it is, I believe, a Korean film, and essentially the first half of the movie is Con Air on a boat, and the second half is Overlord on a boat, but all of it insanely violent, insanely over the top, and just a ton of fun if you're into carnage candy. It's just, anytime violence happens, limbs are coming off, blood is spraying everywhere. If that's your kind of movie, you'll have a lot of fun with this one. Get a bunch of your most obnoxious friends together and watch it with like a bunch of people that just get, yeah, when things go wild and crazy. This is a good time. The thing that held it back for me is that the way that it handles its characters, I'll just simply put, don't get too attached to anyone. Whoever you think is the lead character is not the lead character. And whoever you think is the main bad guy is not the main bad guy. It's that kind of movie where it just keeps overturning and overturning whatever you think is happening. That's not what the movie's about. Like the first, second, and third acts each kind of had their own separate main villain. It kept shifting who was we're rooting for, who was the main villain. And that kind of made for the fun of just this chaotic, crazy, wild movie. It also made it so, because I couldn't get invested in anyone, because I wasn't following anyone's particular journey, because no villain was around long enough to care that much about them, it was just carnage candy. So I just couldn't put it terribly high on the list. Number 8, Lyle Crocodile. And I didn't grow up reading Lyle Crocodile. I have no attachment to Lyle Crocodile. I saw the trailer and had no interest in seeing it in and of myself, but I've got kids and I have a wife that did grow up with the Lyle Crocodile books, and my son has a Lyle Crocodile little stuffy that he used to, sleep with every night, and now, one of the other kids sleeps with it. So we took the entire family out, and at the press screening, they had like a cookie decorating competition, everything. It was a lot of fun, and the movie itself is quite charming. It's a really delightful little film. Awkward with the structuring and the characters, some oddities and the way they decided to kind of put it all together. But the character of Lyle is just so endearing, and the character's designed to like make people happy and pull the best out of them. And that just makes for this fun, uplifting vibe with a bunch of catchy tunes. So I just had a grin on my face the entire time. Now, am I going to, on a Tuesday night, be like, what am I going to watch? I'm going to throw on Lyle Crocodile. No, of course not. But as a movie that my family will potentially be watching in the future, as soon as we can buy it, as soon as it's on digital, stream it or whatever, my kids loved it. My youngest always wants to listen to the songs in the cars. And of all the things that my kids could watch, I'd be very okay if they decided to make this one that we're watching over and over again. It just really is a charming film. Next up, Triangle of Sadness. And this was actually the closing film at Fantastic Fest. And I don't believe I've seen the director's previous films. I hadn't seen a trailer for this movie going into it. All I've seen is like one still image of a woman vomiting. That was my only point of reference going into this movie. And they chose it as the closer for the festival, which usually they want to have something special, something that's won some awards, something with a lot of buzz, something high profile. All I had was a picture of a woman vomiting. Went into this film, no idea what to expect. And it's a movie that's kind of like a takedown of rich people, influencers, and the excesses, the weird ways of life for people in that category of, and them kind of going on this cruise that goes bad. And the movie's like 2.5 hours long. It's very long. Doesn't have a ton of plot, but does have a lot of characters and a lot of things going on. So it's a movie that was just, didn't even know how to process it entirely because there's just so much in there. It's so peculiar in the way that it's structured, handles its characters, and you spend a little bit of while at the beginning following a couple characters, and then you go off and then it's an ensemble film, and then the lead in the third act is kind of someone different, and the people that were main characters at the beginning are our side characters. It's very kind of odd the way that it's structured. It can be very funny at times. There's one sequence when things start to go bad on the ship, and it just goes wild and crazy and like, wow, this is nuts. And you think that like it reached a point in time where I was like, oh, I guess the credits are about to roll. And then there's 40 more minutes in the film. And it feels a little bit like it lets all the energy out, lets all the air out of the balloon 40 minutes before the credits roll. And the messaging stuff starts to take over at the end, and you start to kind of see where things are headed. And you're like, oh, okay, I see what you were going for here. but did it fully work for me? Was it as, like, does it stay at the peak level? No, it does not. Does it start at peak level? No, it does not. It's like a movie that builds to a crescendo and then keeps on going much too long and overstays its welcome a little bit. I don't know. It's tough for me to, it's a movie that's kind of outside my normal scheme of what I cover. So it's tough for me to know how to like score a film like that, to say that I was intrigued by some of it. It certainly made me laugh at a lot of parts. Was I fully on board with the way that it told its story? Did it need to be that long? Did it feel like it lost momentum towards the end? Yeah, it did. Number 6, Ticket to Paradise. If Triangle of Sadness is this wild, crazy, outside-the-box movie that is, you know, prestige Oscar contender that didn't necessarily work for me entirely, but had a lot of great elements, Ticket to Paradise is like the polar opposite. This is a totally formulaic rom-com that worked for me. So that's the fun of this set of films right here. You have as mainstream of movies as you can get. You got prestige films, big populist audience pleasers, micro budget. They're all in here. And at the end of the day, Ticket to Paradise stuck to a formula, but it stuck to it well. And it was just a good time, where it's the kind of movie where it reminds you just how much fun it was to watch movie stars in this genre. We don't get as many movies like this anymore. And, you know, Julia Roberts hasn't done a movie like this in quite a while. And so it's just kind of like a return to this, like this simple sort of storytelling where you just have that basic setup, a set of complications. There was a lie at some point in time, a misunderstanding, something that leads to a reveal, and then everything has a nice happy ending. It's a formula, but the movie plays it well. And it's entirely carried by the charm of our leads. On paper, all of our lead characters here are awful and behaving horribly. The daughter does something that's actually like should be have all red flags all over it for parents. Totally reasonable behavior. Parents are reasonably concerned. The way the parents respond, however, is not reasonable at all. But when you have this much star power, they're so fun. And they themselves make unlikable characters very likable. So it's sticking to a formula, but I had a lot of fun with it. It absolutely made me laugh. I'd totally watch this movie again. Then we have The Banshees of Inisherin. And once again, this is a movie that's like so far outside the normal box. It's a story about a fallout between two friends, very dialogue based. There's not a ton of plot here. And it's all about the performances and just kind of like this tight, witty dialogue. It's very offbeat. It's very peculiar. It's the kind of movie that normal audience will go see it and they'll be like, what on earth did I just watch? And it's side by side on this list with as like mainstream of a crowd-pleasing rom-com as you can get. It's a tough ranking to do because there's such different categories for me. And one of them, I'm much better at knowing how to articulate my feelings about a formulaic rom-com than I am about something like this movie where I was like, oh, it's gorgeous. Oh, the performances are amazing. There's some really funny, clever bits in here. It's also a very different kind of film, very odd kind of film that is a slow burn, but not like different type of slow burn. It's like a slow burn about a conflict between two friends that escalates in the strangest way possible, with some of the stuff that goes down in the film. And so a movie that I like appreciated. It's another movie that I kind of watched. It was right as I was starting to feel I saw it at Fantastic Fest, started to feel the movie fatigue, film festival fatigue, where you've been there for a little bit, you're watching a lot of movies every single day. The specific day I watched it, I actually drove out to Waco to see one of my YouTube friends, drove back, watched 4 movies. It was a very, very long day. So I don't know if that helped or hurt my experience watching the film. But as I said, a movie that's kind of outside my normal box, something a little bit different, and a very interesting, unique experience that I don't know who specifically in real life I would recommend it to, but enjoyed that I got to experience it, and it's one that I probably wouldn't have seen if I hadn't been at the film festival. In 4th place, Hellraiser. And this is kind of an interesting one for me. I actually saw this at its world premiere, not on the red carpet, but like it was a secret screening at Fantastic Fest. We sat down, we didn't know what they were going to play, and they went, it's Hellraiser. So surprise world premiere of the film. And at the time I watched it the first time, I'd only seen the original Hellraiser one time, and that was about a week or two before this. So I was brand new to the Hellraiser franchise. So after I watched this movie at Fantastic Fest, I decided to do a Hellraiser ranking. So I went home, watched all the Hellraiser films in a week, which that's a tough binge. Then I rewatched this movie with a better understanding of the lore, the characters, the franchise as a whole, and I appreciated it a lot more. Kind of saw what this movie was really doing and what it did well, which was pull a bunch of the best elements from the Hellraiser films, even some of the bad ones, merged them together, and just had a stronger central plot line that explained the lore a lot more clearly of how the box worked, what its purposes were, how there were these different levels, what the objective was at the end. And that just created clearer objectives of what our characters were trying to accomplish, what it meant if they were to achieve something. So I just think it was as soon as I watched all of them, it's like, this is one of the best Hellraiser films. It has kind of 21st century slickness to it that I think loses some of the charm of what you get in the original movie. But so there's a lot of practical effects in there. And just the fact that it was able to pull a bunch of things from even some of the lesser movies and make such a cohesive story, lore, and character arcs just made me appreciate the movie so much more on second viewing. And that's sometimes like when you watch a movie without really knowing what it is, not understanding the franchise, you're kind of like, what? Okay, cool. And once you understand the bigger picture, you can appreciate the details so much more. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comments section. What's your ranking of the October? I was about to say November. We're in November. What's your ranking of the October new releases that you saw? And if I missed a movie that you think I would like, let me know about it down below in the comment section. Also, remember, I watched a ton of these movies at Fantastic Fest, and so I have a video that I did earlier where I ranked all of them, talked about them in more detail and closer to when I watched them about a month ago. And I'd recommend checking it out because it'll just introduce you to some smaller, more obscure movies that you might not be aware of. In third place is Black Adam, and for me, this was a comic book movie, B movie. Sure, it has a gigantic budget, but it's the same concept of like, let's just do everything we can to entertain the audience. And so it's jam-packed with action sequences. It moves very quickly. It's jam-packed with jokes. It is absolutely a comic book movie, Taco Bell movie. And it's a phrase I use on my channel to refer to essentially cinematic fast food, where we all love fast food. We all have our favorite fast food places. We like different fast food places. It's not fine dining, but it's so enjoyable. That's what this movie was for me. How much you enjoy this film probably greatly boils down to the mileage you get out of The Rock's version of blockbuster entertainment. If you're tired of The Rock, you're not going to like this movie. You'll just find it loud and obnoxious. If you're still kind of digging The Rock and what he does, there's a lot of fun to be had here. And, of course, a great mid-credit scene that everyone was cheering for at my screening, and a great character and performance with Dr. Fate from Bond himself, Pierce Brosnan. Our runner-up, Werewolf by Night. And this isn't technically a movie, but it's kind of a movie. It's a standalone story that's a little bit longer than an episode of television, at least longer than what television episodes used to be. It's shorter than an episode of Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. So I just decided to include it in here anyway. Make of that as you will. And once again, this is a movie that I was at the world premiere of. It was the other secret screening at Fantastic Fest. We sat down and everyone was guessing what it was going to be. A lot of us were guessing Hellraiser. That turned out to be the second secret screening. Some people were like, will it be Halloween Ends? What will it be? And it turned out to be the world premiere of a new Marvel project, Werewolf by Night. And it was kind of funny. In almost any other context, if you're at the world premiere of a Marvel project, that's something that everyone celebrates. But the reason that people go to something like Fantastic Fest, even the reason I went to something like Fantastic Fest, was to escape Marvel stuff, to escape the most mainstream popular stuff out there. So we were actually kind of disappointed when they announced that this is what was going to be playing, simply because we go to Fantastic Fest to discover other things, not the stuff that has Disney and its marketing department behind it. All of that said, this is a really cool little project that is a combination of Marvel lore plus this 1940s, 1950s monster movie aesthetic just kind of merged together. And that was just a cool experience where you have monsters, you have action, and it's just kind of like this nice bite-sized little bit. It doesn't have the weight of the rest of the MCU on its shoulders. It's not trying to tie into a bunch of things. It's just trying to tell this little monster story about hunting monsters, a competition, and then escaping at the end. And the cool thing in here is because it got to be its own little pocket universe, they were able to kind of go out with it's black and white, with the action, the gore, arms are ripped off, blood sprays on the camera, people's heads are bitten off, all sorts of wild, crazy, fun stuff. I watched this and I thought, I hope we get more of these. I hope the plan is that they're going to drop these types of things. It's high risk, but like in the sense of like it's a risky because it's bold, creative, different, but the cost is low. So it's a risk that's worth taking. $200 million risks for blockbusters. If the risk doesn't pay off, that's a problem. But this couldn't have cost all that much. There's not star power. There's not gigantic CGI. It's in one location. So this couldn't have cost very much at all. I really hope they follow this model and take more risks like this. I would love to see it. But coming in at number 1 for me, I'm going to go Terrifier 2. This is one that I saw at Fantastic Fest. It was opening night of Fantastic Fest. It was a double feature. I saw Smile at its world premiere, and then I went to a midnight screening of Terrifier 2. The director was in attendance. Art the Clown was in attendance. All of the producers were in attendance, and it was a midnight screening, opening night of a film festival that's a genre film festival. These were all horror fans. That's the best possible context to watch a movie like this. After the movie was over with, they did a Q&A, and then we all walked into the lobby, and I'm just standing there talking with my buddies. Actually, I was talking with Chris Stuckman at the time. Turn around and Chris Jericho, who's in the movie, is just standing next to me, like right here, bumping shoulders with me, taking a selfie with someone. So if you're wondering what the best context to watch a movie like this is, that's it. Midnight screening, horror film festival. Everyone's rowdy. Everyone's excited to be there. Cast, crew, celebrities. And I'm sitting around with my buddy Cody Leach and someone like Chris Stuckman, who I've been watching on YouTube for 10 years. That's about as cool of a context to watch a movie like this. But what about the movie itself? I'm brand new to the world of Terrifier. I had never seen Terrifier until just a couple days before I went to Fantastic Fest because I knew I would be watching Terrifier 2 at Fantastic Fest. And so I went in brand new and I was like, Terrifier 1, all right, cool. It's kind of a neat little film because it's so low budget. What they're able to accomplish with so little money, it's impressive. Very simple plot, great little slasher character, but everyone else, you don't really care about any of the rest of the characters. And Terrifier 2 is like if we only had $35,000 for the first movie, we have $250,000 for the second one. So almost 10 times as much money. Let's listen to every criticism and way overcorrect. More characters, more lore, more explanations, more questions. Let's throw in a new final girl who's awesome. Let's just overdo it on everything because now that we have this huge budget of $250,000, which in the scheme of movies, it's still a micro budget film, but it's so much more than what they had for the first movie. So, and it's when I first watched it, you can watch my review for it. I had it a little bit lower and kind of my reviews ranking. It was everything because it was you leave the movie with a bunch of questions. There's a lot of unanswered stuff. There's some like, how exactly did this lore work? But it's the kind of movie that 6 weeks later, I'm still thinking about. I'm so glad that movie exists. That was such a cool little like a movie designed entirely for the people that they know will love it. It makes no effort to appeal to the broadest possible audience. It doesn't censor the violence. It has a ridiculous runtime. It just knows these are the people that will be excited about this movie. So let's give them everything that they want. And we don't need to worry about anyone else. I love that that's what this movie is. I love that it goes from this very simple, like slasher formula to this lore about magic swords and dreams and prophecies and fathers disappearing. Like it adds all these layers to it that when they introduce a final girl, she's literally dressed up as a warrior princess and has a magic sword. I love that it's so bonkers, wild and crazy and all this stuff. And 6 weeks later, I'm not sitting here like, oh man, why didn't they answer all those questions? I just think about all the awesome stuff in the movie. And in the Q&A, they said they're going to do a Terrifier 3. Since then, he's said it's all but guaranteed. And the movie has become this viral hit. It was only supposed to play in theaters one weekend, limited release. And it made like $750,000. And then it which was way more than it was supposed to make. So they put it in theaters a second time, and it made like $1 million. It made even more money. And so they went, this thing's working. So then they went for a wider release, and it made double what it made opening weekend, the third weekend. And they put it out again this weekend for Halloween weekend, did like put it in way more. It's unrated, which means that normally theaters don't carry unrated movies. They only do like very limited showings late at night. And it got put in 1,500 theaters, which is crazy for an unrated film. And once again, it made even more money this weekend than it made the previous weekend, which movies don't do that. They don't have this trajectory. So a movie that cost $250,000 has gone on to make $8 million at the theater already. And it wasn't supposed to make its money in theaters. It was supposed to make it on streaming. So it's just a fun behind the scenes story of indie horror, a movie I got to be at one of the very early screenings 2-3 weeks before it actually got released, saw it at the perfect context, and a movie that like I've just been excited about ever since watching it because it's just such a bonkers, crazy movie designed for people who will enjoy it. If you don't know this, it's like the marketing or the people have been reportedly passing out vomiting at screenings. I don't know if that's true or if it's just a marketing deal. It's a gross movie. It is not like entry level horror. It's not one you just casually go in there. Like you got to know you are going in there for an endurance test for a crazy wild horror film. And if that's your thing, they just go for it and deliver this cool film. So even though I had a little bit lower when I first watched it, it's just the movie I'm most excited about from last month. The movie that I've been like rallying behind to just watch this underdog story, $250,000 film, making $8 million in the theaters. It's wild, it's crazy, its performance is wild and crazy, so it comes in at number 1. Remember, if you wanted to hear more of my thoughts on the movies in this list, you can check out my video about Fantastic Fest and dive in deeper on some of those. Also done reviews of other movies that were in this list. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.